Hi there and welcome to Cleansing Virtual Academy. Our topic for discussion today is the ecosystem. We are going to be looking at the various interactions in the ecosystem and the effects on humans. Okay, so we have learned from our previous class that an ecosystem is an interaction between living things and non-living things in their environment. Okay, so an ecosystem can be as big as the whole earth and can also be as small as a pond. In an ecosystem, living things interact in different ways. How do people interact in the community? People interact by talking with each other, playing together and helping one another. Living things also interact with non-living things in the ecosystem, depending on them in order to survive. Some example of non-living parts of the ecosystem are the sun, air, water, food, soil, and the rain. Plants depend on soil, sun, and water to prepare their own food. Human beings and animals also will not survive in the ecosystem without air, water, and food. So in this lesson, we'll learn about some possible interaction that occur in a given ecosystem, and we'll also learn how these interactions have effect on humans and other living things within the ecosystem. Now let's look at possible interaction that occur in an ecosystem. So living things interact with other things in order to get food. Okay, all living things need food to grow. Plants as well. Plants as living things prepare their own food through photosynthesis and they provide food for other living things, and this is why they are referred to as producers. Human beings and animals as living things do not make their own food, okay, but they either depend or compete with other living things in order to get food. That is why human beings and animals are referred to as consumers. Living things interact in an ecosystem through a process called predation. Okay, let's look at what predation is and what it entails. So predation is an interaction between living things in an ecosystem, can be represented using what we call a food chain. Okay, so when you look at the picture, you can see that it is like a cycle, but not a complete cycle. So all the animals depend on each other, or they all depend on one thing. Okay, they all depend on one thing. So we say that it is a food chain. We say that the picture is a concept of food chain. Now, what is a food chain? A food chain shows how living things depend on each other for food. Okay, so in a food chain, the animal that feeds on another animal or plant is known as the predator. And then the animal or plant that is fed on is the prey. Okay, so some examples of predator-prey interaction are lion and a zebra, a bear and fish, a fox and a rabbit. So in the lion and the zebra, the lion becomes a predator, the zebra is the prey. In a bear and a fish, the bear is a predator, the fish is the prey. Fox and rabbit, rabbit is the prey, fox is the what? The predator. Now, there are animals that can be both predators and prey. For example, a frog that eats insects can also be eaten by a snake. This makes a frog both a predator and a prey because it becomes a predator when it feeds on insect and becomes a prey when the snake feeds on it. Okay. Now there are four main types of predation that occur in an ecosystem. They include the carnivory predation, herbivory predation, parasitism predation, and then mutualism predation. We are going to look at them one after the other. So in the carnivory predation, you will see that the predator eats the flesh of another animal only. Animals that eat the flesh of other animals are called carnivores. Carnivores are also called flesh-eating animals because they eat other animals. Okay. So examples of carnivores include the lion, the fox, the tiger, the leopard. Okay. So an example of a carnivore predation is a lion eating an antelope. So you can see from the image there that the lion is going to eat the antelope. It has caught an antelope. It is going to eat for dinner or lunch or breakfast. Okay, so that is a carnivore predation. So in this case, the lion is a predator. The antelope becomes what? The prey. Now the second is the herbivory predation. In this kind of predation, the predator eats plant only. They eat plant only. So example of such predators include sheep, goats, horses, rabbit, giraffe, cattle, and so on. So this kind of predators are called herbivores. So herbivores are also known as plant eaters because they eat plant only. So a cattle feeding on grass is an example of herbivore predation. An antelope or a goat or a rabbit or a zebra feeding on the grass is an example of herbivore predation. So there are also animals that can feed on both plants and animals. So in the first scenario, we saw that the animals feed only on other animals. In the second scenario, we realized that they feed on only on what? Plant. But there are other sets of animals that can feed on both plants and animals. Okay. Such animals are called omnivores. Omnivores because they can feed on plants and animals as well. So examples include human beings, bears, monkeys, dogs, and birds. Let's look at parasitism. This is an interaction between two organisms in which one benefits or another one is harmed. Okay, so the organism that benefits is called a parasite, and the organism that is harmed is called the host. So parasite is an organism that lives in or on the body of another organism for food, shelter, and protection. Now the host is the organism whose body is being used as food by another organism. Okay, so you can see an example of such predation is a tick on the body of a dog, okay, or a mosquito on the body of a human being, or weevil in corn or beans. They are all examples of parasitism. The fourth is the mutualism, which involves interaction between two organisms where both of them benefit from each other. Okay, so an example is interaction between a bird and how they feed on plant fruit. Okay, so when a bird feed on the ripe pawpaw, they carry some of the seeds in the pawpaw to other areas. The seeds begin to grow in new areas to continue the life cycle of plants. Also, insects feeding on the nectar in flowers, they transfer pollen from the flowers to flowers through their feeding in the nectar. Right. Now, how has the interaction affect humans and other living things in a given ecosystem? So let's look at hunting. Hunting is a process done by humans. It's a process. So what I was saying, hunting is a practice done by humans to trap and kill animals, mainly for food. Okay, so hunting can affect an ecosystem in so many ways. Let's look at how hunting can affect an ecosystem. So how do hunting of activities affect the interaction between humans and other living things within a given ecosystem? Well, in a forest ecosystem, hunters burn bushes or cut down trees to trap animals. These activities destroy the habitat of the animals in the ecosystem. And then most animals leave their habitat to find safety in other places when they are being hunted. Okay, so trees are very important in our environment. So basically, the cutting of trees causes deforestation. The burning of bushes also causes other other animals or other living things in the ecosystem to go extinct. So basically, these are some of the things that affect the ecosystem through hunting. Okay. In a water ecosystem, hunters use poisons such as DDT to trap fishes, and these poisons destroy the water bodies. Okay, they also affect the health of human beings that feed on the fishes. Using such water bodies for washing, drinking, and cooking also affect the health of human beings. Now let's look at farming. Farming is an act of planting and growing crops for food. Although farming provides majority of the food we eat, certain farming practices affect the ecosystem in various ways. Sorry. Now, when trees are cut down to make space for planting, the habitats of some animals that live on the tree are destroyed. Plowing of the land also destroys most living organisms, such as worms and ants that live in the soil. Some farmers also apply certain chemicals as fertilizers to the soil to make their plant grow faster and then increase in size. The chemicals used on these plants are very poisonous. Human beings who feed on those food are likely to fall sick, and they may contract diseases such as cancer. Now let's look at the effects of predation. Predation has an effect on human beings, animals, and plants in the ecosystem. Most cases, the interaction between parasites and their host causes the host to fall sick or lose energy. For example, mosquito is a parasite that feeds on human beings. So the human being becomes the host. This is what causes malaria, which can lead to death. Plant parasites such as weevil lives in maize and beans, and they do so as they do so, they affect the growth of the plant. Now, herbivores, when they are grazing on land, sometimes they overgraze and then on grassland, causing the land to become bare. They also destroy crops. Overgrazing by these animals cause an imbalance in the ecosystem. Animals that live on such lands have to travel or migrate from that place to look for new habitats in other places. Right, this is the end of our lesson on ecosystem. Now we have known that there are four major types of predation. We have looked at mutualism, parasitism, we've looked at carnivore predation, and then the herbivory predation. I hope you have learned a few things here. I'll see you another time with another lesson. Until then, as I always say, keep reading your books. Alright? So till we meet again next time.